Everyone in AI seems to be talking about a second brain. 3 weeks ago, Singapore's foreign minister published the architecture for his personal AI second brain, and he said this: "It's become invaluable, I don't dare switch it off." A few weeks before that, Andre Karpathy, one of the most respected voices in AI, published the concept that everyone's building on, the LLM Wiki, a persistent compounding memory. And every productivity creator on the internet has been telling you to build one for years.
You should build a second brain, and then how to build a second brain using the code framework.
It's a system designed to amplify you, to unlock your creative potential.
So what exactly is a second brain? Why has the idea suddenly gained more traction now AI is here? Does your team actually need one? More to the point, how do you build one without sending all of your data to OpenAI, Anthropic, or some third-party software? Well, today we're going to break it all down, and then we're going to build one on Gcore's infrastructure in a European data center using Kimi 2.6, so no data leaves the EU. A second brain is all of your notes, your decisions, your context externalized, so you don't have to remember everything yourself. Tiago Forte wrote the book in 2022. Ali Abdaal popularized it on YouTube. But it's easier to see it as a niche fad or something only productivity gurus are into. It hasn't had any real application in the workplace office. It was certainly not something ever on a CTO's agenda. Because the problem with a second brain has always been maintenance, tagging, filing, organizing, cross-referencing. It becomes a full-time job, even for a solo entrepreneur, let alone a large enterprise. Now all of that changed with AI because AI now does the maintenance. It can read your notes, categorize them, summarize them, find patterns, surface contradictions, but more than that, it also acts as your long-term memory for your AI. Through recursive synthesis, the AI reading its own notes and rolling them up, your brain gets smarter on its own while you sleep, and that's the massive unlock here. And once you can do this for one person, you can do it for a team. Every employee gets a knowledge base specific to their products, their clients, and their decisions. Now onboarding takes days instead of months, knowledge survives staff turnover, and the AI services patterns across the whole organization, finds the contradictions, those blind spots, the strategic angles that humans miss. I do think this is the productivity multiplier of the decade, and every company on the planet is going to do it eventually. Indeed, I have one. The question is, how do you do it? Well, here is where it usually falls apart for any huge enterprise company. You end up with employees individually signing up for ChatGPT or Claude and adding company data to tools like Roam Research or Notion. Everyone is doing their own thing under the radar until you guessed it, someone gets caught, something gets leaked, and here we are, folks, in a compliance nightmare. 6-month review with legal, IT, and the data protection officer. All fun. So how about we don't do that? Let's build a second brain where the data doesn't leave systems that you control. And so here's what we're going to do instead. So first of all, we want to sign up for Gclaw. That's Gcore's managed agent product. It runs Kimi 2.6, the open weight Chinese model that rivals Claude at a fraction of the cost. Now it's on Gcore, it's free during beta, there's no credit card required. All you've got to do is set up an account. Now, 30 seconds later, you get a Linux VM. My one is in Frankfurt, and with OpenClaw, that's the agent, is already wired to Kimi. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is SSH in from your machine. This is a real server in a data center, so if we run this command, you can see we're running Ubuntu. The next thing we're going to do, once we've got our virtual machine set up with Ubuntu, is we want to install Silverbullet. It's a self-hosted notes app, open source, pure markdown, no telemetry, no plugins phoning home, there's no third-party sync. You can just ask Gclaw to set it up for you and install it. Now, why Silverbullet over Obsidian? Well, Obsidian has hundreds of community plugins that phone home. For compliance, that can be a hole. Silverbullet is purpose-built to be self-hosted, but it uses the same markdown files that OpenClaw and LLMs love to read. It also has a great structure for small docs, though we won't get into the markdown versus HTML wars for now. Now, the next step is, of course, you want to lock down your VM. Silverbullet only listens internally, never on the public internet, and to access it from your browser, you want to tunnel through your SSH. You use one command and everything is encrypted end to end. Now, this is the strongest part of the pitch. The brain isn't on the internet. Every other note-taking tool, even the private ones, they have a public web URL, and this doesn't. The only way in is an authenticated SSH session to the VM. Now, the next thing you want to do is you want to add your notes. Now, I already have a second brain, my scripts, project notes, Gcore content plans, an entire export of all of my Claude chat history, all of my consulting work. I just rsync the folder over to SSH. And a few seconds later, every file is in Silverbullet, and OpenClaw through Kimi 2.6 can now read all of it. Now we need an interface. So let's wire up a chat interface, and there are two options here. We've got Telegram for personal use. It's beautiful on the phone and it's perfect for when it's just you. But for an enterprise rollout, of course, we're going to use Slack, specifically Slack Enterprise Grid with EU data residency. Standard Slack routes messages through US servers, and that breaks the compliance story. The EU residency tier keeps everything in region, so it's worth checking with your Slack admin if you have access to this. Now, Gclaw supports both natively and a few lines of config, and that's it. Of course, if we're going to be building this out properly, it might even be worth us building out our own chat interface for the second brain, so that employees don't have to SSH every time. Read works, but can we make it right? So here we go. What about if we want to save things to our second brain? Well, you want to create a / command. / command is essentially a skill, so it knows how to summarize our notes, and when we're having a big conversation, it can simply summarize all of that big conversation into a nice formatted markdown note for us and save it in the right category. That means it's just 2 seconds and we can send the data to the right place, and we can have all of our notes cross-linked. Now, how do we get this thing to update automatically? Well, once a night at 2 AM Frankfurt time, a cron job is running. It can read everything I've added that day, update the project pages, run a health check, flag contradictions, fetch the latest YouTube analytics via the API, and update the channel plans.
For this video, we'll keep it simple and make one simple cron job. Once a night, Gclaw will read everything from the last 24 hours in Silver Bullet and write a 1-page digest: what changed, what contradicts what projects need attention. First, we'll write the cron script in Python. Next, we'll set the actual cron job, and finally we'll test the cron job itself. You can of course ask Gclaw to assist you with this.
So that means then the brain gets smarter on its own while I sleep, and that's the recursive part. That's the difference between a notes app and an actual second brain that you don't have to do any maintenance for. And if you're a CEO or a CTO or a manager, that means you can have an oversight of all the conversations your team were having with the second brain. Now, the next stage will of course be to sync all of this up so that you can have access to all the conversations your employees were having with LLMs overnight, so you have a company second brain. Now, the question everyone watching this has been waiting for: is this GDPR compliant? Well, here's the answer. The architecture is GDPR aligned, not GDPR compliant out of the box. And the reason for that, what Gcore is giving you is technical, 70% of the way there. So your data is sitting in Frankfurt, the encryption is enforced, and you control the keys. There's no third-party model provider that ever sees your note. And that is the part that usually kills these projects off on day one. But the remaining 30% is paperwork, which your compliance officer should know all about. That's things like a signed DPA with Gcore, a privacy notice, a data protection impact assessment, a right to erase workflow, a 72-hour breach response plan, a DPO if your scale demands one. So that work is of course yours to do, but with Gcore you start from the other end. You start with the infrastructure already sorted, and then you can do the paperwork. Now, by the way, I'm SSHing into this from outside Europe right now. Now that's fine. GDPR governs where data is stored and processed, not where authorized admins access it from. The data stays in Frankfurt. I just look at it through a tunnel. Now, if you want to try this for yourself, Gclaw is free during beta. The link is in the description. It runs QE 2.6 as we said, and the VM I'm using is Frankfurt hosted, so there's no credit card required. Now let me know if you set this up and how you're getting on. I'm super interested to hear how you've created a second brain, and I'll see you in the next one, my friends.